Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Benji-Sales live chat. It's so good to be back. It is so good to see everybody. How are you doing today? Hope you are doing great. I hope you are doing fantastic. Hopefully you can see me and hopefully everything's all good. It looks like it's good on my end. It's great to see everyone. We have a really big actually news topic week this week. We've got so much to talk about. So last week was a little bit of a light news week. This week is actually pretty heavy with some pretty big stories. So I'm pretty excited for this. I don't know if they're going to be the biggest stories in the world to like more casual people, but for people that are interested in the video game industry, we have several really big, exciting topics, in my opinion, that we're going to talk about today. Hope you're all doing great. So, what are these topics? What are our big things that we're going to discuss? Well, there is a few of them. So, let's do these one at a time. I'm going to break down kind of like the highlights off the top on some of the stuff we can talk, and then we'll get into more. Probably the biggest thing for my audience, for people that are interested in sales, people that are interested in data, all of that sort of thing, probably the biggest and most crazy thing is these Xbox financials that just came out. And they're really interesting for numerous reasons. There's numerous reasons why this is pretty interesting. So first of all, let's go into just the actual basics, right? The actual basics of this report. Sorry, I thought I had everything pulled up, but I actually forgot to do one more thing. Here we go. Okay, so here is the brief kind of overview that came directly from Microsoft, and then we're going to delve into like some more intricate details on these financials. So first of all, here's just the overarching broad strokes things that Microsoft announced on their earnings. So first of all, gaming revenue overall grew by 9%. That's pretty darn nice, actually, almost 10% growth for their overall revenue. Xbox content and services revenue grew by 13%. This is actually excellent, driven by first-party content growth and Game Pass. Now, the main pusher here is Starfield, and we're going to go into that in just a minute. Now, here's the one negative from these earnings, and it's actually pretty darn interesting because the negative normally would be seen as a bigger deal, except for the direction Microsoft's going, and I actually have some stuff I'm going to comment on that. So their Xbox hardware revenue declined by 7%. This was pretty surprising to me. It shows that Starfield itself didn't drive a ton of hardware growth. So that's not to say, I mean, here's the thing. That's not to say that there was none, because this covers 3 months. So we don't know the exact details about how the 2 months prior to Starfield were shaking out, other than very bad. We know that there was some boost in Starfield launch month. We kind of talked about that whenever we're going over the Circana data. But either way, we know that Starfield didn't have explosive hardware growth. And we were kind of talking about that last week when we were talking about those Circana numbers. You know, for anyone that was in the chat last week, we were talking about how the US sales for September were like, they were fine. They were good. They weren't like amazing, but they weren't disastrous. They were just fine results. And we had talked about how Europe was actually really bad. Like Europe just really did pretty awful for Xbox hardware. And we were talking about how, you know, it was clear that Starfield did not drive console growth in Europe. There was some boost in the US, but it was an explosive boost. And here's what we're going to have to get into. I made a tweet, and a lot of Xbox fans were misunderstanding this tweet. So I had made a tweet, and I was talking about how, you know, I'm going to have to start thinking about Microsoft differently as we move forward through these quarters. And I had seen a lot of like Xbox fans being like, "Oh yeah, now you finally get it." And it's like, guys, I've gotten it for a long time. I'm not going to say any like behind the scenes details, but I've talked to Xbox executives. I just flat out have. I understand like their goals. But to me, it was always one of those things where it was like the future, right? Microsoft was moving that direction. And I kept thinking, because I think this was the case until very recently, that like the hub of Microsoft gaming is still that console, right? Yes, they're growing through, you know, subscriptions. Yes, they're growing through PC. Yes, they're moving into mobile. Yes, they're moving into cloud. But for years now, it's been like that's the end state goal, right? We're moving in that direction, but they weren't really there yet. And you can just see that in the financials. It was still heavily centered around console, with these other things kind of slowly adding on over time. And what I meant by that tweet, whenever I'd said, all right, I'm going to have to start thinking about Xbox differently now moving forward, is I think this quarter right here was the one that really, to me, drove home that switch has flipped. Now, that's not to say that console's not important anymore, but we're seeing stuff like PC, for example, becoming such a massive part of their business. And even like, Game Pass now must be contributing significant content and services revenue. People want to keep talking about Game Pass and whether it's growing or not, and we don't have a ton of details around where they're at in subscribers now, but it's very clear through these earnings that we're kind of hit that transition point where the flip is now starting to happen. And while Xbox hardware is still going to be important, you still want to see a lot of consoles, right? I'm sure Microsoft still wants a ton of consoles. We are now, I think, officially at that point where console hardware growth is nice, but it's almost becoming a bonus and not necessarily the centralized hub of their business, pushing those consoles so they can sell, software on that console and Game Pass subs on that console. Still important. That's not me saying the console is not important, but we're seeing now, for example, how heavily Starfield was PC centric. Not that it wasn't big on console, but how big it was on PC. I think that switch is kind of flipped. And I think moving forward, we're going to have to really think about their business expanding, because I think their earnings have caught up to what their goals were. So why do I say all of this? Why do I say, well, these things are actually amazing earnings overall for Xbox, but how can you say that while their hardware's down? Well, let's get into it. Let's get into some of the stuff from these earnings that is just straight up incredibly impressive. So what does that mean, that this growth that we're talking about outside of just hardware? Here's some details. And it's broken down really well by my friend Welfare, John Welfare on Twitter. Excellent. Really amazing number cruncher. And let's get into some of these results that are incredibly impressive about this quarter. So it was actually the fourth best content and services result ever for Xbox. Now, keep in mind what I'm about to say. The fourth best ever. And the only three that were ahead of it for content and services. We're not talking about hardware. We're talking about those Game Pass subscriptions. We're talking about those software sales. The only 3 quarters that were ever ahead of this quarter were all holidays. And we know how heavy holidays is for everyone's earnings, whether that's Xbox, Nintendo, PlayStation. This was a non-holiday quarter that was the fourth best ever for content and services, and it wasn't even a holiday. In fact, it was the best Q1 ever for overall gaming revenue in the entire history of Xbox. Now, these are some pretty stunning results, if I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. Revenue is estimated right around $3.9 billion, which is insane. That's actually such a big non-holiday quarter that it's actually better than what Xbox was doing in 2017 during the holidays. The highest Q1 ever for them. Amy Hood noted that Starfield outperformed expectations. Satya Nadella mentioned on the earnings call that Starfield drove the biggest single-day Game Pass subscribers in the history of the service. Starfield generated a lot of revenue. There was a lot of discussion around Starfield. Is it a flop? Is it a success? And I had talked about last week, I don't think you can criticize the sales performance. I was talking about how sales pleasantly surprised me, seeing a Game Pass game #1 in the US and #2 in mainland Europe. And this is a game that's on a subscription. And now you see these content and service numbers that are just astronomically huge for them. The thing it shows me is that Starfield drove a ton of revenue. Now, a lot of that wasn't just in game sales. So when I say Starfield generated a ton of revenue, it does appear to have sold pretty darn well for a Game Pass game. But outside of that, I think that early access must have generated a ton of revenue because it had that early access, that you could upgrade to. So if you weren't even going to buy the game itself, if you're a Game Pass sub, you could spend, I think it was like $30, $35, get the early access, get the DLC. Clearly, tons of people did that, which drove a ton of revenue. And as we're seeing, there was a ton of Game Pass growth because of Starfield as well, which is all going to be content and services revenue as well. Biggest day of new signups in the history of the service. Starfield internally at Microsoft, at least in terms of launch, there's no doubt about it. They see this as a massive success. Like, there's just no way around it. You're talking about the best quarter ever in this window for them, a content and services quarter that's better than any year ever except for 3 holiday quarters. I mean, that's a lot of revenue. There's just no way around it. Now, there's still some question about legs. That Starfield player number they gave, that's 11 million now, is far below what I was expecting. So we can go into if Starfield has good legs or not. But its actual launch itself, I mean, this was a highly successful launch. Microsoft's going to be thrilled with that launch number. But I do have some questions around legs. So that's really the stuff I'm going to break down off of the top in terms of the earnings. Hardware, it's just not great. There's just no way to spin that part of it. But their content and services and overall gaming revenue is just excellent right now. Very, very good stuff for them. Another big topic that we can talk about in regards to Microsoft is going to be there's been a bit of a reorganization of their leadership, how that shakes out, how it works. Basically, the two biggest highlights here are going to be Sarah Bond and Matt Booty both got promotions. So Sarah Bond got promoted to Xbox President, overseeing all Xbox platform hardware and software. Congrats to Sarah Bond. She's been doing amazing stuff over at Xbox, and she definitely deserves the promotion in my opinion. And then Matt Booty got promoted to President of Game Content and Studios, including now he oversees ZeniMax and Bethesda. Now, I had some people trying to reply to me over this tweet saying, this isn't any change at all. These people just basically got new titles. That's not true. It's just not true. These are actually upgraded roles. They now have more responsibility, both of these people, and they also have a lot more power than they used to. And you can look at that through the leadership chain and who reports to who. Both of them now have a lot more power than they had before. So no one was fired. It wasn't really like, oh, people got fired and now they're being replaced. It was more just like Phil and Satya giving Sarah and Matt Booty more power. And what do I mean by that? So Matt Booty before, he would just oversee basically Xbox Game Studios, right? Not ZeniMax Bethesda. I'm sure he would talk to people over at Bethesda. I'm sure, there was some communication going on. But essentially, the only people that he was directly responsible for were those Xbox Game Studios. We're talking people like 343, Turn 10, etc. The people under that umbrella. And ZeniMax and Bethesda was run basically separately, right? They're still going to be ran semi-separately, so it's not one of those things that now ZeniMax and Bethesda is just under Xbox Game Studios. They are still kind of their own thing, except the difference now is that they do have to report to Matt Booty. So that means he does kind of have final say on a lot of what happens at the ZeniMax and Bethesda studios, whereas before, it was more just I'm sure he was kind of communicating with them, giving them ideas. Well, no, now he actually has authority. They report to him. So that is an upgrade in power for him and responsibility. And for Sarah Bond, she actually got a lot of new roles. In fact, Sarah Bond's role now is very heavy for Xbox gamers, right? We're not talking about just gaming in general at Microsoft. We're talking about directly the Xbox platform, just Xbox. Sarah Bond is essentially now the most powerful person in charge of the Xbox platform, not the whole gaming ecosystem. That's still, of course, Phil Spencer. He is the CEO of Microsoft Gaming. At the end of the day, he has the final say on everything. He's the guy that's going to be over Bethesda ZeniMax, over Xbox, over Activision Blizzard. He hasn't gotten any degradation in power at all, but the day-to-day runnings of specifically the Xbox platform, you guys are going to go out and buy Xboxes. Essentially, Sarah Bond is now the day-and-day runner of the Xbox platform. In fact, her responsibilities now include, via Phil Spencer's memo itself, she oversees devices, player and creator experiences, platform engineering, strategy, business planning, data and analytics, and business development. She is running the day-to-day business and strategy and devices of the Xbox platform. That is pretty crazy. So, again, no one was fired. It wasn't really we're completely changing everything we're doing here. But Matt Booty and Sarah Bond are now very, very key players in Xbox. Not that they weren't before, but even more so now than they were before. So pretty crazy stuff there. We can talk about if these are good moves, bad moves, if you guys like it or not. The final big topic that we can talk about is, of course, near and dear to my heart, and that is Alan Wake 2. Alan Wake 2 reviews are in, and they are overall stellar. I told you guys last week, I said, get ready. Expect very strong reviews for this game. I could just see it coming from a mile away, and they are great. In fact, right now, it's tracking to be the best reviewed game ever by Remedy. Over at OpenCritic, it's sitting at an 89, which is absolutely spectacular. And over on Metacritic, it's at an 88 on PS5 and an incredible 92 on PC. I'm seeing a lot of people focus on that 88, which is an amazing score, by the way. But to be honest with you, they'd actually probably be maybe at a 90 Metacritic if this was enveloped kind of how OpenCritic is, where it's just one platform, because a lot of the quote perfect scores that Alan Wake 2 got are not being included in that PS5 one. The GameSpot 10, which is weighted very heavily, that's only on PC. They're not including that over on the overall Metacritic. It's 5 out of 5, which is a 10 from VGC. It's not included on that 88 one. There's a 10 from Xbox Era that's counted in Metacritic. That is not included on that 88. So it's incredibly high reviewed game. We're talking an 88 on console, a 92 on PC. Absolutely stellar scores. I'm so thrilled for Remedy. We can talk about if they're going to be a Game of the Year contender this year, if they can get one of those 6 nomination spots at the Game Awards, how this game might sell, etc., etc. All right, everyone. That is it for Off the Top preamble and news story breakdowns. For anyone, if this is your first time ever as part of my live chat, the way it works, it's a stream, it's a show 100% driven by you. Your comments, your questions, you just drop them down into chat, and we talk about the latest news in the video game industry. There's going to be a few ways to do that. First of all, of course, there's the super chat option. You type a donation, whatever you want, it pops into chat, and I get to super chats immediately as soon as they drop. Another way to guarantee that I get to your comments and questions is going to be by becoming a channel member. Channel memberships are $4.99 a month, and basically what that does for you is it gets you priority in the chat. So I guarantee that every single channel member, every single stream gets at least one comment or question highlighted. Usually that's much more than one, but you're guaranteed at least one depending on how big the streams are, and you get that chat priority. As always, of course, if you don't want to spend any money or anything like that, totally get it. You can just drop free comments and questions in chat. Can't guarantee that I get to every one of those, but I get to as many as I possibly can per stream. As always, don't feel pressured or obligated to donate or provide any money. It's just a way to help support me and the channel. I will get to as many free questions, as always, as I possibly can. All right, everyone, let's get rocking and rolling. I'm excited for the stream because I think we got some really good topics. Oh, there's some other stuff too. Mario Wonder's doing amazing. People are probably going to ask me about that. Huge numbers for Mario Wonder in Japan. Incredible numbers for Mario Wonder out of Europe. So, there's a whole bunch of other topics. We don't have to just talk about the things I highlight off the top, but those are just kind of the big news stories I highlighted. Let's get rocking and freaking rolling, yo. We got some super chats already off the top, so let me hit those. I'm seeing a bunch of channel members in the chat. Thank you, guys. Great to see all of you. All right, let's get to these super chats. Baby Cakin, what is up, Baby Cakin? So good to see you in a very generous 20 super chat. Dude, that is incredibly kind, man. You don't have to do that. Saying, hope you're enjoying Alan Wake 2, Benji-senpai. Keep up the great work on your channel. Well, thank you so much, baby. I'm just so happy to be feeling better again, man. I'm pulling myself out of this thing, guys. Slowly but surely, we're headed in the right direction on that mental health. 2023, as you guys know, was a friggin' beast for me in terms of that. And we're not completely out of the woods yet, but very much moving in the right direction the last, 2 to 3 weeks. And that's only going to keep going. So thank you so much, baby. Thank you for the support. Thank you for everyone for the support throughout this year. I know my coverage has been kind of crap compared to what it normally has been the last few years. But that was just because of all the freaking struggles I've been going through. But we're turning the corner. We're turning the corner. Thank you. That's a very generous super chat. You don't have to do that, man. It's great to see you. George Corona III with a 10 super chat. Thank you so much, George Corona. Just curious, what would Sony have to lose by putting Game Pass on PlayStation at this point? Sure, it competes with PS Plus, but doesn't it ensure their hardware grip plus give access to certain games down the road? Now, this is a fantastic question, George Corona, especially as we talk about how Microsoft... Again, not that console is not important for Microsoft gaming, but as you see more and more them expand way beyond console, right? In fact, look at what Phil Spencer's position title is. It's not head of Xbox. It's not head of Xbox gaming. The sort of titles that we've seen for Xbox leaders since the inception of Xbox. What is Phil's name? It's CEO of Microsoft Gaming. There's not even the word Xbox in his title. It's Microsoft Gaming. So again, it's not that Xbox isn't important to them. I mean, clearly it is. They want to sell consoles. They're still selling millions of consoles, right? They want to keep doing that. But it's not like their centralized hub. And there's starting to become more and more discussion around, hey, is there some sort of situation eventually where you see a Game Pass on PlayStation? Is that sort of thing something that could happen? It's a really fascinating question because on one hand, I think we are getting to the point, and I've said this before I suspected that Phil would be willing to put Game Pass on PlayStation, man, I think we might be like fully there now. Like we might be at the point where if Sony really offered that to him, Phil would be like, heck yeah, let's do it. But here's the thing. I think Sony is going to always push back against that as long as Microsoft is making a console, because at the end of the day, Sony specifically does see Microsoft as a competitor fiercely. They just do. And as long as Microsoft's manufacturing a console, it's a great question on if they'll ever allow it. But George, my hunch, you're asking what do they have to lose? The argument you can make on what Sony potentially has to lose is that, let's be real, there's no doubt about it, millions and millions of PlayStation gamers would sign up for Game Pass immediately. There's not a doubt in my mind. If you put Game Pass on PlayStation 5, I mean, the explosive growth Game Pass would get would be absolutely ridiculous. Being able to play Gears of War games on a PlayStation, being able to play Halo games on a PlayStation, being able to play Starfield on a PlayStation, all these future Xbox games on a PlayStation in the subscription service. I mean, guys, it would explosively grow on PlayStation. And the counter argument, for that, why Sony, I think, wouldn't like that, is because as long as Microsoft's making a console, think about how much revenue they'd be giving their competitor, right? I mean, all of that Game Pass revenue, let's just say theoretically they could get 20 plus million subs out of PlayStation, which, by the way, I think they absolutely easily would. I think they could easily get 15, 20 million subs out of the PlayStation ecosystem in total, right? Over time. I'm not saying like day one, but I mean, realistically, on just Xbox and PC, which Xbox has a far smaller install base than PlayStation does, look at the subscriber numbers they've been able to get to, and that's completely without PlayStation. Putting that on PlayStation with a vastly higher install base, yeah, they would get a lot of subs. And Sony's going to look at that, look at how much money we're now giving essentially to Microsoft by letting them have this. That's money that they can again funnel back into their own production, making their own first party games even stronger, making their own console, ecosystem and whatever things they're pushing there even stronger. And I think Sony doesn't want to do that. So that is my hunch. And again, I don't know any of this, but my hunch is as long as Microsoft's making a console, Sony will not agree to Game Pass on PlayStation. That's just my hunch. If Microsoft completely dropped the console, like they just got out of the console business, I think you probably would see Sony allow Game Pass then to come over. Because essentially at that point, Microsoft would just be a third-party publisher. But as long as they're making that Xbox console, I just don't think Sony will do it, George. But I could be wrong. We'll see. Highlander with a 10 super chat. Thank you so much, Highlander. Great to see you, man. Always in every stream. Hey, Benji, hope you're doing great. With Sarah Bond and Matt Booty getting promoted, and with Jim Ryan and Connie and her team leaving, Sony is a tale of two different companies. What does this say? Yeah, this is interesting because as much as there are things to criticize about Xbox and praise about PlayStation, in terms of future vision, and we have to see how any of this plays out, but in terms of vision, Xbox feels like they're much more confident and knowing about where they're going. Now, keep in mind when I'm saying this isn't me saying, oh, Xbox is just going to, dominate PlayStation and now they're going to outside. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if you look at Xbox and their leadership and their chain and their goals and their plans, they seem very locked in. We know exactly what our strategy is. You can debate if that strategy is going to work or not, but they seem very, very confident we know the direction we're going. PlayStation, as we've talked about many times, is more in this nebulous space of between the old way of how PlayStation ran their business and also adapting to a new way of running their business. In other words, Microsoft, they know they're putting their games as many places as possible, essentially. They're trying to drive a subscription service. They're doing all of this sort of stuff. Sony's still fully focused on console, but then kind of putting their games on PC later. They're making their single player games, but now they're kind of cutting back on, not necessarily cutting back, that's not the right way to phrase it, but they're putting a ton of emphasis on games as a service. And now there's some questions if maybe they're pulling a little bit back from that games as a service again, because of things like what happened around that Naughty Dog multiplayer game. There's some reports floating around that a lot of devs at Sony are very upset about this games as a service push. So it's very interesting because listen, PlayStation's an incredibly healthy business. So this isn't me trying to say in any way, shape, or form, PlayStation's struggling, PlayStation's in trouble, oh no, oh my. I just think Sony is still getting into grips of what their future plans are with PlayStation, how they're positioning things, what their strategies are, while Xbox seems very laser focused. They know exactly what they want to do. So it's going to be interesting. I'm not one of these doom and gloom people, very rarely. Like, I don't just doom and gloom companies because you can always adapt, you can always change, you can always do whatever. I think Sony will be perfectly fine, perfectly healthy. They're going to sell tons of PlayStations. They're going to have insane revenues. They're going to sell tons of first-party games. Look at what Spider-Man 2 just did. But it is interesting. Yeah, it is interesting how Xbox definitely feels like they have their strategy essentially locked down on what they're going to do, and Sony's still a little bit figuring that out. Thank you so much, Highlander. Mr. Real Shane with a 2 super chat. Thank you so much, Mr. Real Shane. What are the Game of the Year contenders? What is your number 1? Okay, let's drop the first poll. I love doing the polls. And the first poll is going to be, does Alan Wake 2 get one of the 6 The Game Awards Game of the Year slots? We're going to say yes, it does. And then no, it doesn't. You guys know I'm incredibly biased on this one, so I'm just going to give you my honest opinion. I think yes. I think it's very likely that Alan Wake 2 gets one of these 6 spots. It's one of the highest reviewed games of the year. You're seeing people like GameSpot giving it a perfect 10. You're seeing places like Easy Allies say it's the best game of the year for their review. And these are all the sort of people that are going to nominate these 6 positions. So it's up to you guys how you feel. As I noted last week, anything Alan Wake related, I'm going to be incredibly biased, so I can be wrong. I don't think Alan Wake is going to win by any means, but I do think it's going to get one of those 6 slots. But let's see what you guys think. Okay. And as for you, you're asking me, what are the Game of the Year contenders? I think the final 6, and this is incredibly hard. I feel pretty good about 5 of the slots. I think 5 of the slots are very likely. And again, in a year like this, it is so hard to say. The only 2 that are 1,000,000% locks, like there's just no chance. These 2 games are, trust me, bet the freaking house on it. Tears of the Kingdom and Baldur's Gate 3. We all know that. Those 2 are locked. I would literally be willing to put a $1,000 bet on it. Those 2 are getting Game of the Year nominations. Now, the next 3, I also feel pretty good about. I don't consider them locks because this year is so absolutely crazy, but these next 3 I'm just very confident in. The next 3 I'm going to say are Mario Wonder. I think it's very likely. I'm going to say Spider-Man 2. I think it's extremely likely. And I'm also going to say Alan Wake 2. I think enough big publications really loved this game that it is going to slot into that top 6. Now, that 6th position to me is an utter wild card. It could go to literally anyone. I mean, really any of these slots besides Zelda and Baldur's Gate could go to anyone. But I still feel pretty good about those other 3. But that's number 6 slot. You have so many games fighting for it. Final Fantasy 16, Resident Evil 4 Remake, Street Fighter 6, Sea of Stars. Did I say Final Fantasy 16? Like, there's tons of games that are going to fight over that 6th lot. I know a lot of people are going to feel like Resident Evil 4 Remake is a lock. In most years, I would think it would be. But to be honest, I think some people are just not going to nominate it because it is a remake, and I have nothing against remakes. We've seen remakes get nominated for the Game of the Year award before. But in a year as heavy as this, I think it would be better to give those slots to just brand new games. And Resident Evil 4 Remake is a great remake. They changed a lot. They updated a lot. This is by no means an insult on Resident Evil 4 Remake. But let's just say I was providing a ballot to the Game Awards, which I'm not, of course. I'm not big enough for that. But let's just say I was. I would not give it a spot just because I'd be like, listen, there are so many games fighting for these positions that are just brand new experiences. I'd rather give one of those games an opportunity than a remake. But not everyone's going to feel that way. And Resident Evil 4 Remake is incredibly highly reviewed, so it easily could slot in there. Street Fighter 6 is a 90+ meta. That easily could get in there. Final Fantasy 16 reviewed similarly to Alan Wake, a little bit lower, but still excellent reviews for Final Fantasy 16. Sea of Stars reviewed great. You could put Starfield in there. I don't remember if I mentioned Starfield as fighting for this slot, but it is. It's one of those games fighting for it. So It's hard to say. Like I said, the only two that are locks are Baldur's Gate and Zelda. I feel good about those other three, but I don't consider them locks, but I feel good about them. And that sixth slot to me is just like a battle to the death, but we'll see. I mean, any of these could be wrong besides the two. But that's how I would predict it. We'll see how it goes. My number one game of the year, right now, all year long, it's been Tears of the Kingdom since that came out. That's been my game of the year, like just straight up. There's been a lot of games I really liked, but that's been my game of the year. I'll tell you though, Spider-Man 2 is giving it a run for its money, and as biased as I am towards Alan Wake, if people that aren't biased towards Alan Wake are giving this incredible reviews, me as someone who is biased to Alan Wake, I mean, I'm probably going to literally lose my mind over this game. So, as of now, still Tears of the Kingdom, but Spider-Man 2 is creeping up. I'm not done with it, but I'm pretty deep into Spider-Man 2. That's creeping up, threatening that position. And also Alan Wake 2, again, probably very strong chance that could take it for me. So we'll see. Right now, Mr. Real Shane, it's still Tears of the Kingdom for me, but I won't be surprised if Spider-Man or Alan Wake take that from it. But I loved, again, as of now, it's still Zelda. We had another super chat come in from Benji. Benji dropping a 5. Thank you so much, Benji. Great to see you always in every chat. Hi, Benji. Spider-Man 2 is the fastest selling Sony game for 24 hours, but it's not the length period as for Ragnarok, The Last of Us 2, or Spider-Man records, right? Yeah, we don't know if it beat those or not. Sony just hasn't provided an update. We know that in that very first day, right? Day 1, 24 hours, fastest selling PlayStation game ever. It was over, what was it? It was over 2.5 mil, right? Sorry, I should have had that written down. Sorry, my voice is like kind of going out. It's kind of weird. 2.5 million in 24 hours, right? Yeah, 2.5 million plus in the first 24 hours. So, Benji, that is accurate. We don't know if it beat Ragnarok or The Last of Us over those days, simply because Sony hasn't given PR. Now, that doesn't mean it's not, because I saw some people being like, oh, it broke the 24-hour record, but it didn't beat Ragnarok or, The Last of Us. We don't know that. Sony hasn't given us an updated number. We'll have to see if they give us one in the next couple days. I would say if you don't hear anything in the next few days, that it probably didn't, because Sony would want to shout the record. So, first 24 hours... it's just confirmed. It was the fastest selling PlayStation Studios game ever. Whether it be, a 3-day window, a week window, that we just don't know. We're going to have to get numbers from Sony to know if that's possible or not. But definitely, clearly an explosively massive launch for Spider-Man 2. Either way, whether it is going to in the end outpace Ragnarok and The Last of Us Part 2, we're just not quite sure yet. But either way, its actual launch is just absolutely incredible. Incredible. Okay. Super chats are cleared. Let me hit them channel members. Thank you guys for donating. Hammersley Ford channel member here. Hello, Benji. Hope you're doing great. Keep up the awesome work. Lords of the Fallen sold over 1 million copies in 10 days. Is it good or bad? Pretty darn good, I would say. Now, the budget was higher than I thought it would be. For anyone that missed the budget, it was like $60-something million. That is crazy, right? We used to think of these like AA games as being like, much lower than that, right? It used to be traditionally, a AA budget game is like, 20 million, 30 million, something like that. And you would think like, approaching 100 million, not quite, it was 60-something million. But once you start getting up into that range, you'd start being like, oh yeah, this is like AAA budget. Well, the video game industry continues to change. And now we're seeing games with like $200 and $300 million budgets. And a AA game is now more like 60, 70, $80 million. So pretty crazy. I'm actually glad they put that number out there, because now we have some more context around how much more expensive AA games are getting. Just like AAA games keep getting more and more expensive. 1 million in 10 days, in my opinion, is still great, though, for that game, because in the end, it will be profitable. Now, they probably haven't fully recouped their profit margins yet, because, you could say, oh, 1 million copies at $60 or $70, that's already over their budget. Well, no, not necessarily, because they don't get the full cut of all those sales, right? Their platform holder's going to get a cut, etc., etc. So I don't think Lords of the Fallen is already profitable, but it's about to be profitable. If it sold 1 million in 10 days, there's no reason to think it's not going to continue selling. That doesn't mean it's going to have go on to sell 10 million units, but there's no doubt in my mind this game will be profitable for them. So yes, it is definitely a good result, but I'm glad they put that budget out there because, again, not that it, is reflected for every AA game, but the more numbers we can get out of there for this sort of stuff, the more we can get some perspective on what the real AA budget range is looking like in the modern situation in the industry. So yeah, definitely great result. This game's absolutely going to be profitable for them, which is what you're always shooting for. So yes, Hamish, very, very good. Very, very good for sure. Jacob Novick, channel member. Hi, Benji. Speaking of Alan Wake 2 and Remedy, do you think a Quantum Break 2 ever happens? No. And do you agree with the statement Mr. Boomstick made on stream that it would have happened if Xbox bought Remedy? Jacob, personally, I don't think you'll ever see Quantum Break 2. Remedy just seems fully focused on their connected universe. They don't own the rights to Quantum Break as far as I'm aware. If they owned the IP for Quantum Break, I think they would bring it into their connected universe, but they don't. As far as I know, that belongs to Xbox. And I don't think Remedy wants to work on a game like that that's not part of their connected universe. They're making, they just made Alan Wake 2. We'll see how successful it is or not. If it's a really big success for them, I'm sure you'll probably eventually get Alan Wake 3. We know that they're making Control 2 right now. Again, if Control 2 is super successful, they'll probably do Control 3. Their big investment right now is in their connected universe. Because, spoiler alert, for anyone that doesn't know, I'm sure everyone knows by now, but Control and Alan Wake are in the same universe. They completely take place in the same universe. So they seem very focused on that. I don't think they would want to put resources into Quantum Break 2 because, A, I don't think Microsoft's going to greenlight it because the reality is Quantum Break 1 wasn't a huge sales success. Microsoft also wouldn't greenlight Alan Wake 2. A lot of people forget that. Remedy tried to make Alan Wake 2. They tried to make it happen for years back in the day, and Microsoft just wouldn't give it to them. That's why they ended up doing Quantum Break, because Microsoft eventually was just like, guys, we're not going to give you the budget for Alan Wake 2. We'll give you a budget for something new, but we're not doing Alan Wake 2. Which, in my opinion, was a massive mistake, but, that's what Microsoft decided to do. So, yeah, I wouldn't expect Quantum Break 2, man. I just don't expect that to ever happen. Would it be cool? Sure. I mean, I'd love to see it, but I don't think it'll happen. The only way you'll see a Quantum Break sequel, in my opinion, is if Microsoft allows Remedy to get the IP rights. Now, your other question is, if Microsoft would have bought Remedy, would they have made Quantum Break 2? I don't know. I'm just going to be honest. I know Xbox fans are always rooting for acquisitions. I'm glad as hell Microsoft didn't buy Remedy. I'm so glad they didn't. There would have never been an Alan Wake 2, in my opinion, if they bought Remedy. So, considering how many times they shot it down. So, best news in the world for me that they never got acquired. I'm so happy they didn't get acquired. I know Xbox fans aren't going to be happy to hear that because they're always rooting for acquisitions, but thank God they did not. And then, see, Jacob saying, also, I think it's good that Remedy got the Alan Wake IP back. Absolutely. I'm super glad that they got the IP rights back to that. So, that's the main reason why I'm very glad Microsoft didn't buy them. Listen, would it have been good for Microsoft to buy Remedy? Maybe, because I think Remedy is one of the best studios in the world. You guys know that. But I'm just glad they didn't, because I'm not confident we would have ever gotten Alan Wake 2. So, thank God. Hammersley Ford, channel member. I think Starfield is completely locked out of getting a Game of the Year nomination right now. I do think it's unlikely. Don't even see it getting any awards at all, to be honest. I was crazy hyped for that game. Unfortunately, it does not excel at anything and falls short on so many edges, in my opinion. Well, I'm not as negative on that as you are, Hamish. I still found Starfield to be a great game. Like I said, I've put 70 or something hours into it. I'd have to check my playthrough, but beat it, did tons of the side content, 70 or 80 hours or whatever in the game. I really enjoyed it. It was a super solid game. But do I think it has a Game of the Year slot? I think it's, of the big games, I actually think it's the least likely. There's just a lot of people that didn't like it, and that, it's a bit of a surprise to me because I do think it's a good game. But the truth is, there's a lot of people that didn't like Starfield. There's a lot of people that loved Starfield, absolutely. Is it going to get some votes to get into that Game of the Year slot? Absolutely. And do I think there's a 0% chance it could get one of those 6 slots? No, I don't think it's 0%. It was a big game. A lot of people played it. But I think of these big ones we're talking about, these Baldur's Gates, these Zeldas, yes, even these Alan Wake 2s. I think Alan Wake's more likely than Starfield. These Alan Wake 2s, these Final Fantasy 16s, these Resident Evil 4 remakes. Like, I think Starfield has the least odds of all of these big games contending for it. That doesn't mean it's impossible. This year is such a freaking battle. Listen, he should up the number of nominees. I've talked about this before. Like, Jeff should not be sticking to 6. Sticking to 6 is a mistake for multiple reasons. Why does the Oscars have, I believe, 10, by the way? They have a ton for Best Picture. I believe it's 10 nominees. And Emmys have, I think, 8 for, like, Best Series, Best Drama Series, for example. And video games are still sticking to 6. Listen, it's better to get more nominees out there because you get more attention. That's the truth. Why does the Oscars do 10? They don't do 10 out of the goodness of their heart. They did 10 so more movies could get nominated, so more movies people are interested in, they can be rooting for. Like, literally, that's why they did it. And part of it was because of The Dark Knight. There was a huge controversy that The Dark Knight didn't get nominated for Best Picture. And that was back when they were doing, I think, 6 slots. I think they were at like 6 or 8 at the time. And there was all of this controversy that The Dark Knight didn't get it. And it was shortly after that, they all of a sudden were like, now there's 10 nominees, because they were trying to get more big movies being able to be nominated for these positions to help with ratings. Jeff is getting tons of ratings. Who am I to tell Jeff how to run a show? But I think sticking to 6 is a mistake, especially with how many games come out per year now. I don't want to see it pushed to like 12. Like, every game everyone likes gets nominated. But it really should go up to at least 8. I mean, Emmys do it. Oscars do it. There's a reason why they have more nomination slots. He should go up from 6. I don't even know if he should go to 10, but he should do 8. I don't think there's any reason to go lower than 8. And if we're in a case where there's 8 slots, to me, the odds of Starfield making it in go way higher. But at 6, I don't think it. No, I would not predict Starfield, no. Jacob Novick. Channel member, do you see Quantum Break 2 being a thing in our lifetime? The main voice actor said when Quantum Break 2 was trending on Twitter that he wants to make it. No, I just don't think that game will ever happen unless Remedy gets the IP rights. If Microsoft gives Remedy the rights to Quantum Break, maybe. Outside of that, no. Kelligram's in chat. Great to see you, buddy. Channel member. Sin saying howdy. What's up, channel member? What is up, Sin? Casual Noob Gamer, channel member. Do you think because Alan Wake is a story about a writer and VGA is nominated, voted on by journalists, do you think that the journalists will give Alan Wake 2 a nom when being it's also good? Yes, I do think it's going to be nominated. I'm very confident, actually, it gets nominated. No, I don't know if it's because journalists are biased. I think it's because it's a fantastic game, more than likely. I think the first game... Guys... If you ask me any question about Control or Remedy, you're going to get a biased answer. I literally think Control and Alan Wake are 2 of the best games ever made. So, like, I told you guys this last week. If you ask me anything about Control or Alan Wake, you will get biased answers. I'm just very transparent about my biases. I am biased towards these games. So I think it gets nominated. I think it's going to get nominated because it's probably fantastic. You know, Control got nominated for Game of the Year. So, and Alan Wake 2 is considered by... basically, if you look at critics, a much better game than Control. Yeah, I think it's very likely it gets nominated. Again, I think it has 0% chance of winning. But I think it gets nominated, yeah. And I'm sure journalists do, you know, take some stuff about Alan Wake being a writer into consideration. Kelligrim channel member question. What's up, Kelligrim? Great to see you, buddy. Sup, Benji? Hope you're doing well today. Do you think that Game Pass's success will flatten out some of the highs and lows throughout the year for Xbox? Steady income seems better for any company. There's no doubt they're getting a lot of money through Game Pass. I mean, if you look at that content and services, it is pretty crazy. There's no doubt about it. Now, again, we can have some discussions on whether Game Pass is already flattened out in terms of subs, because I've told you guys I think it has. Microsoft keeps talking about how Game Pass is growing. All evidence over the past year or two has been that growth has been very slow. You know, like they're not adding a ton of subscribers per quarter. They're adding a little bit. However, it looks like Starfield very much accelerated that. We don't have a new subscriber number, but they noted, again, biggest single day increase in subs ever for the service. And then you see content and services soar and set records. Clearly, they made a lot of money off Game Pass this quarter. So the question is, can they maintain that, right? The biggest issue for Game Pass, people have been talking like, Benji, are you, and I've mentioned this like almost every stream whenever people mention it, when people are like, Benji, are you shocked Game Pass isn't growing? And I kept telling you guys like, no, where are the first party games? You know, all of the third party stuff is great. All of the indies that hit it is great. All of the games that come, 6 to 12 months after launch onto the service are great. And hey, some of the day one ads from third parties are great. That is not going to be what drives the subscription. What drives the subscription most is going to be big first-party content. Why do most people sign up for Netflix? Most people sign up for Netflix so they can watch Stranger Things, so they can watch Squid Game, so they can watch The Witcher, so they can watch blah, 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 blah. Why do most people sign up for Disney Plus? So they can watch Marvel shows, and they can watch Star Wars shows, and they can watch the big Disney movies. Like, if the number one thing that's going to boost Game Pass subs is going to be big first-party games. And what has Microsoft done the last year and a half to 2 years is have almost no big first-party games. So I've been 0% surprised at the deacceleration of Game Pass subscribers. That should just be expected when you're not putting games out to drive the subs. Clearly, Starfield had a big impact on subscriptions, and let's see if they can continue that. That's the question. Microsoft has to continuously release big games onto the service, or they're not going to maintain, big subscriber growth. That's just the truth. So, Kelgrim, the answer to this question, sure, it's great for them to have big recurring revenue monthly or quarterly or however people are signing up for this, but you can't count on that if you're not consistently releasing big games. You just got to do it. So again, it's looking like they're heading that direction. If you look at their calendar, it definitely looks like they're headed that way, but it's one thing to say it and it's another thing to do it. They got to keep consistently doing this. Yo, Samuel Tolbert's in the chat. Great friend of mine. He just did an Alan Wake 2 review over at Windows Central. Amazing journalist. Great dude. Follow Samuel Tolbert on Twitter. Check out his work. He's always doing stuff for Windows Central and various other places. Great to see a buddy. I think I saw Split End in the chat too. What is up, Split End? Again, great friend of mine. Doing great work at Gaming Trend. He also reviewed Alan Wake 2 over at Gaming Trend. Great to see a buddy. Sin. Channel member. I hope Booty has a team directly under him to lighten his load. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty heavy now, right? He already had a lot of responsibilities just overseeing the Xbox Game Studios, but now he's also overseeing ZeniMax Bethesda. That doesn't mean he makes every decision there, by the way. We were talking about that off the top. They're still being ran semi-autonomously. It's not like all of a sudden Matt Booty's just going in there and telling everyone what to do, but it does report to him. So he's going to have the power now that if something's not getting done or it's not getting done right, he does now have control in many ways over stuff that happens over there. So, he already had a lot to deal with at the game studios since that has grown. Now he's got all of ZeniMax and Bethesda also reporting to him. It's pretty heavy, yeah. Yeah, it's definitely pretty heavy. He better, be super prepared for the position. There's a lot of controversy in Xbox circles around that, by the way. Sarah Bond, I saw essentially nothing but excitement from Xbox fans over that. People at both internally at Microsoft and the Xbox fan base seemed to love Sarah Bond. That was met with almost universal positivity. I did not see the same thing for Matt Booty, right? There was a lot of controversy with Xbox fans over that was a good decision or not to promote him. A lot of Xbox fans feel he has done a poor job because of the consistency of release games under him. We'll just have to see. I'll be just straight up honest. I've also been critical at times over Matt Booty. So, but I don't work at what I said last time. I think I talked about this. Can't remember when it was, but at some point we were talking about Matt Booty, and I was saying, I wasn't sure if he was doing a good job or not. And the thing I said at the end of it, though, was I was like, but the reality is I don't work there, right? I don't work there. Phil has way better perspective on what Matt Booty's doing on a day-to-day basis and what is his fault and what's not his fault. So clearly Phil has faith in Matt Booty, considering he literally promoted him. So he must be doing something right. J2 Blue Wonder channel member I saw. Wait, what? There we go. Saying, hello, Benji. Hello, chat. What up, J2 Blue? Telegram says, I've been enjoying the polls as well. I love doing the polls. I love seeing what you guys think. I always say the stream's not just about me, rambling for an hour and a half. I want it to be interactive. That's why I like reading your guys' stuff out. It's about your guys' opinions too. All right. In fact, let's end this poll and let's go to the next one. I asked you guys, does Alan Wake 2 get one of the 6 The Game Awards slots? And definitely most of you feel the same way, but it's not like a blowout. But 61% of you say yes, it does. 39% of you say no, it doesn't. I'm with the 61% that say yes. Again, I'm biased. However, I think those that are saying no are not like wrong necessarily at all, because this year is so insane. I'll tell you what, if you put a game like Alan Wake in many years, I think it is locked, essentially. Most years, I would say Alan Wake 2 is a lock at an 88, 89, or whatever Metacritic. You see that all the time. Lots of big PlayStation exclusives got nominated for Game of the Year with that sort of score, for example. Or even non-PlayStation exclusives. Like, I mean, It Takes Two won Game of the Year. And was that even at a 90 Metacritic? Actually, I think it might have been. I think it might have, actually. I think it might have slid into that 90 spot. But I could be wrong. No, it has the exact same score as Alan Wake. It Takes Two as an 88, and that won Game of the Year. So most years, I think Alan Wake 2 is like a literal lock. Like, I don't even think it's like an eligible. I think it's a lock. But this year is so stacked, while I think it's likely, I don't think it's a lock. Just because 2023 is so insane. All right, but most of you do think it's going to get nominated, and I agree with you. Next poll, I think it'd be interesting to run that one from earlier. Do we ever see Game Pass on a PlayStation console? Well, ever is too long. I'll say, do we see Game Pass on a PlayStation console in the next 10 years? Right? Because if you say ever, I mean, theoretically, that could stretch out for, we don't know how long Xbox and PlayStation will be around, but I mean, that could be 100 years. Like, easily, that could be 100 years. So it's like, all right, at some point, who knows? I'll say the next 10. In the next 10 years, do we see Game Pass on a PlayStation console? Simple yes or no. All right, where are we at? Where are we at? We have some super chats. Highlander with a 2 super chat. When will we see the income from ABK and Microsoft's earnings? Well, here you go. Next quarter. In fact, I forgot to read that out. Next time they report their earnings, you'll see ABK. So, and I can tell you exactly what they're expecting, because I was on the earnings call and I tweeted about it. Okay, so here's what they expect next quarter. Now, this will be the first quarter with Activision Blizzard accounted for. And I noted on Twitter, some people misunderstood this. They thought I was saying like, oh, Activision Blizzard won't continue to bring in a ton of money. No, that's not what I mean. And what I mean by this is going to be like a one-time event. And what I mean by a one-time event is like this first year. This first year, whenever they're forecasting, like the first year they have Activision Blizzard, you're going to see insane year-over-year jumps that they're forecasting for the first year, because the comparison, you got to think, they're going to be comparing it to last year, and last year there was no Activision Blizzard King. So this is a one-time event. This next year, hold on to your butts. It's going to be super exciting. You're going to see Microsoft forecasting insane growth every quarter because they're comparing to a year without ABK. Now, the next year, you're not going to see the same sort of insane growth jumps, not because Activision Blizzard King won't be contributing, but because then they'll also be contributing to a year where they had Activision Blizzard King. You see what I'm saying? The ceiling is raised. So at that point, I'm sure they'll still forecast growth, but it's not going to be these insane percentages that they're going to forecast over the next 4 quarters, because it's going to be the first time, like, you're comparing to when they didn't even have Activision Blizzard King. So all of a sudden you have this giant publisher now under you. Yeah, the year-over-year growth forecasts are going to be utterly insane. So, and they are insane. So next quarter will be the first time that you see Activision Blizzard King included. And what they're expecting for gaming revenue, this is insane, by the way. Both numbers I'm about to read you are utterly insane. And But again, that's to be expected when you buy the developer of Call of Duty and World of Warcraft and Overwatch. So gaming revenue, keep in mind, I was talking about how a 9% growth was like great, for this last quarter with Starfield. Okay, 9%, great. No, next quarter they're forecasting growth in the mid to high 40s. All right, not 9%. 40 something percent. And then in content and services, they're forecasting growth in the mid to high 50s. We're talking huge numbers, okay? So they're forecasting massive growth, which shouldn't be surprising. I mean, they bought the biggest third-party Western publisher, but yeah, crazy. You'll see that next quarter. So essentially 3 months from now. And then Highlander had another super chat of 5. It's being reported that Phil will be at BlizzCon. That's not surprising to me. They're first party now. Do you expect any announcements? Absolutely. What is your daughter for Halloween? Mine is a Viking princess. Oh, super cute. My daughter is dressing up as one of the characters from Descendants. I don't know if you're a girl dad, so you probably know. People that don't have kids probably don't know what Descendants is, but it's like a Disney Channel like movie thing, live action, and she's being one of the characters from Descendants because she's at that age where she loves the Descendants songs. So that's what she's dressing up as. And Phil at BlizzCon, again, not surprising at all. They're now first party. They are a first party. They're all first party studios over there now. So do I expect announcements? Absolutely. It's BlizzCon. There will be new announcements. I don't know if there will be many brand new game announcements. Maybe Blizzard's ready to show that survival IP they're working on, though I'm guessing no. I'm guessing that's probably far enough out they won't. I don't know if you're going to get a bunch of new game announcements, but yeah, you're going to get new announcements for Diablo in terms of like Diablo 4 stuff. You're going to get new announcements for Overwatch 2, which, by the way, like this is one of the most like least talked about things, but Overwatch 2 continues to like leg very well. People like to pretend that Overwatch 2 is a dead game. It is absolutely not a dead game. So, in fact, they're about to make so much money off of these new skins for this K-pop thing they're doing. But yeah, you're going to see Overwatch stuff. You're going to see Diablo stuff. You're going to see World of Warcraft stuff. Like, for sure. There will be new announcements. I don't know if you're going to see many brand new games. Maybe they have a game or something up their sleeve, but they'll definitely announce stuff. Jacob says, I'm not rooting for Xbox acquisition always, Benji. Oh, for sure. Yeah. No, I'm not saying you in general, Jacob. I'm just saying like I see a lot of Xbox fans, constantly rooting for. So, Jacob, don't take that me as saying like you specifically. I'm just saying I'm always seeing Xbox fans online always asking for acquisition. So, it was more of like a general term, not like specific. I know you know that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I wasn't saying you specifically. I'm not for a Remedy buyout from Xbox, but also it really feels like Xbox screwed over Remedy when they went in Alan Wake 2. Yeah, I agree. They should have just given them Alan Wake 2. And I know that, the counter argument is that, Alan Wake 1 wasn't a huge seller out of the gate, but a lot of people don't realize that game sold over 5 million units. It did. Like, my brain's not working. What is this freaking... Sam Lake talked about it. But the problem for them was that Alan Wake didn't sell 5 million units fast. It sold it over years, right? So it's not like Alan Wake was some niche title that sold like 500,000 units. A lot of people don't realize Alan Wake crossed 5 million units sold, but it did. But again, that took years, and it did it, at a fairly slow pace, and it did it at a lot of discount, right? It wasn't necessarily a game that sold 3 to 5 million units at $60. It had to leg out over years and at cheaper prices. So Microsoft, I guess, felt they didn't make their money on Alan Wake, but I talk about this all the time. If you're first party, you take the risks, man. You have to. You just take risks. I think that nowadays... Microsoft might be more willing to, let's say that Alan Wake had been a more recent game under like the Phil stuff. I think there's a higher chance you would have gotten an Alan Wake 2 from Remedy than, like if that had been a more recent thing. I'm not saying the one all the way from 13 years ago. I'm saying I think Phil would be more willing to like greenlight stuff and keep things rolling than some past leadership. So I do think that was a mistake though. Because Quantum Break didn't even do that great, right? Instead of greenlighting Alan Wake 2, which probably realistically would have outperformed Quantum Break, because Quantum Break did not sell well either. In fact, it definitely sold less than Alan Wake over time. Instead of giving them Alan Wake 2, they gave them this new IP that also didn't blow up. In fact, it performed worse than Alan Wake. There's no evidence that over time Quantum Break outperformed Alan Wake. And So in the end, yeah, you probably should have just done Alan Wake 2. You would have got more bang for your buck, but they didn't see it that way at the time. Printy Dude, Golden Joystick Awards has 20 for Game of the Year. Yeah, that's too high to me for the Game Awards, but 6 is just too low. You're lower than literally every major award show. There's just no reason to limit it to 6, right? You give it 8 slots, you get more attention automatically because you have more games that people want to see win and are going to be rooting for. I think 8 should be the minimum. They even could push it to 10 and be like the Oscars if they want, but there's no reason to sit at 6. There's just not. Jeff is like handicapping himself by doing that. And again, I'm not telling Jeff how to run a show. He can, trust me, Jeff can run the Game Awards a million times better than I can, right? All of that work he does, like that's a massive effort behind the scenes, how to make a show flow, how to get... Listen, all of that stuff, I'm not even remotely pretending I know what I'm talking about. Jeff is like light years ahead of me. I'm just saying specifically this one thing, whether they should be at 6 nominees or 8 or 10, there's just no reason to keep it at 6. That one specific thing, there's just no reason to do that. That is too low. For how many games get released per year, that is too low. That's too low. I mean, there's a reason like every publication does their top 10. They don't do their top 6. You know, it's just you're artificially limiting yourself. J2 Blue Wonder really should be 8 at least. Exactly. It really, really should. That's just too low. Kellegrim, in the future when we're all watching the Benji Game Awards, there better be 8 nomination slots. Well, that'll never happen. My growth is absolutely massively slowed. But that's my own fault because my coverage has been so poor. Hamish, 8 seems to be about right. Yeah. Yeah, at least 8. At least 8. I agree with that. All right. J2 Blue Wonder says, where am I at? My predictions for Game of the Year: Mario Wonder, Tears of the Kingdom, Spider-Man 2, Alan Wake 2, Baldur's Gate 3, and maybe Street Fighter 6. Yeah, for 5 of them, we're in the exact same. And again, that 6th slot could go to anyone. Really, any of them could, but I agree with you on 5 of them. For sure. Blazing Flame, do you think other superhero games could be successful too? We're about to find out. Do you think DC and Marvel will learn from their mistake from games like Avengers, Gotham Knight? Should they stick to single player, try multiplayer? Listen, people want single player comic book games. Like, that's what they want. That's just the truth. That's not to say that there's like nowhere to find space for some sort of games as a service thing, but if Avengers had been like a Spider-Man level quality single player game and not some weird Destiny trying to be thing, I promise you it would have been more successful. Zero doubt in my mind. People want to play the fantasy of these heroes and seeing their stories. Like, I say this all the time, the MCU is falling apart now, but the reason the MCU blew up and got so huge, it was because people loved the characters and they wanted to see what happened to the characters. Like, that's the real truth secret behind the MCU. Not that the action's not awesome. People love to see, you know, the big comic book fights and stuff, but people got very attached. The reason why you saw such high, you know, numbers for like every single movie, it wasn't just like, oh, one specific character's popular, you know, for years and years and years for Marvel. It was every single movie basically was a hit. Again, some bigger than others, but it's because people were so invested in the storylines, right? They had to see every story because they had to know what was happening next and how it was going to impact this character. It's almost like a giant TV show. People want these stories for these heroes, right? And trying to just force some games as a service thing, I just don't think that that's what people are looking for with these IPs specifically. And you're seeing that exact pivot right now. I think that they also realize that, because what's Wolverine going to be? As far as we know, a big single player game like Spider-Man. What's this Black Panther game from EA coming up going to be? It's already announced. It's a big single player game. What's the Iron Man game from EA coming up? They already announced. It's a big single player game. So I think they learned that lesson. They saw what happened to Avengers. They saw what happened to Gotham Knights. I hate to say it, but they saw exactly what's about to happen to Suicide Squad. And I think that they learned it, and now we're going to find out if these games can be successful. Like, this is the test. Yes, there was Guardians of the Galaxy in there, but one thing I always remind people, Guardians of the Galaxy, people forget how bad the marketing was. That game was absolutely mocked at the E3 it was first shown at. I remember vividly. When they first showed that at E3, all the comments were, these characters look nothing like the movies. Why do they look so weird? Why are the graphics so bad? Because if you remember, it did have a poor E3 showing. There's not a doubt in my mind that impacted its launch. And it was also coming right after Avengers, which people felt very negatively about. So to me, the big test are these next big three. It's going to be Wolverine, Black Panther, and Iron Man. If these games are hits, then hey, we're rolling, right? There's definitely proof now that these single-player games, it's not just Spider-Man. People want to see other big single-player characters. But if for some reason they underperform, then it gets a lot more questionable. It's a lot more questionable. But we'll see. These next three are the big tests. And of course, they have to be good games. But those are the tests. Joseki, yo, you became a channel member, Joseki. I very much appreciate that. I remember you saying that you weren't going to be able to. Joseki, you did not have to do that, but I very much appreciate it. Oh, and Joseki, I just realized, I should have realized this a long time ago, that your avatar is Chainsaw Man, dude. I love Chainsaw Man. So good. So good. I just saw it because you're thinking that I was like, oh, by the way, Jujutsu Kaisen right now. Ooh! I don't know if you guys have been watching Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2, but it's freaking banger, dude. God, I love Jujutsu Kaisen. But nice Chainsaw Man avatar. For some reason, I never realized that was power. So good, though. All right, I need to get some more freebies. So let me make sure that these have all been hit, because we've been going a while. I gotta hit some freebies. We'll get through these super chats and then go into freebies, and I'll come back down later to get channel member stuff. Highlander with a 2 super chat. My daughter was Mel one year. She loves the movies. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Descendants. Yeah. Same for my daughter. And then Highlander, last question. Do we see another super chat? Do we see WoW on Xbox and PS5? Yes. So if, you know how we've had this big discussion around Activision Blizzard, like, you know, is there going to be exclusives? Is there not going to be exclusives? I will say this, Highlander, if they do bring WoW to console, I suspect that will be a multi-platform game. Because I've said before, I think Activision Blizzard is going to absolutely make some Xbox exclusives, but I think there's going to be some stuff they make that is going to be multi-platform. I suspect something like WoW, which is not a new game, right? WoW is not a brand new game. Even if it comes to console, it's a game that's been out forever. I suspect if they bring WoW to console, and this is an if, we don't even know if it's happening, but if they do, Highlander, I suspect that would go to PlayStation as well. I think they would put WoW on Xbox and PlayStation. I could be wrong, though, but I kind of feel like they would. It's been around forever. Everyone knows what it is. It's not a brand new game that was just started in development. I think they would just put that on PlayStation, you know, break in all that money from it. Could be wrong, though. Split in at 89 with a 2 super chat. Thanks, bud. You don't ever have to do super chats, man. Saying, happy Alan Wake 2 day, Benji. I can't believe it's real. I can't believe it's real, man. You know, if you would have told me like 5 years ago that Alan Wake 2, you know, I'd actually be playing it, I had honestly given up hope on Alan Wake 2. I couldn't believe it. That finally happened. Thank you so much, buddy. And happy Alan Wake 2 day to you too, man. Even though I know you've already played it because you reviewed it. Kellegrim, do you think Insomniac could replicate the success of Spider-Man with another character? We're about to find out with Wolverine. And if so, would it have to be a character that also flies around a large city? Well, Kellegrim, I don't know if you know this, but Insomniac's making Wolverine. It's already announced. They already released a trailer for it. So, and that's going to play nothing like Spider-Man. And in fact, it's going to be an M-rated game, they've indicated. So we're about to find out. We are literally, that is the test for them. Wolverine. I suspect we're going to see that game somewhat soon. Not necessarily released somewhat soon, but I think they're going to show footage of that somewhat soon. It's been in development for years now. But yeah, Insomniac's already making it. The Miles Morales team moved over to Wolverine. And there's other people too. But a lot of people that worked on Spider-Man Miles Morales went over and started Wolverine while the Spider-Man 1 team was working on Spider-Man 2. Again, it's not as cut and dry as that. There's, you know, some interchangeability, but that's kind of how it worked out. Spider-Man 1 team working on Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man Miles Morales team working on Wolverine. That's kind of how it shook out. Not exact, but so yeah, we'll find out. That's going to be a very different character, very different tone, very different gameplay. So that's the test for them if they can repeat it besides Spider-Man. Tunsi K with a $5.99 super chat. Thank you so much, Tunsi K. With Xbox declining in hardware sales, it looks like Microsoft is taking more shares on PC from Steam than growing in console space. I don't think cloud is a big two. I agree with that, Tunsi. I agree. I think most of the growth that we're seeing for them outside of consoles coming from PC. I don't think much of that's coming from cloud or streaming. I'm sure they're doing some cloud and streaming stuff, but Microsoft even noted during their court case with the FTC, they even talked about how like cloud wasn't necessarily accelerating growing from them. I agree with you, Tonsi. I think a huge amount of the growth they're experiencing right now is from PC specifically, and I think a ton of PC Game Pass subs. You know, we talked about that right whenever Starfield came out. We were talking about how, you know, really its Steam concurrent number was nowhere what really any of us expected, and I was talking back then how like it was very clear to me that Game Pass on PC had become much larger than I thought it was. Then you had Satya come out with that announcement that was the biggest single day increase in subs ever, and you found out how, you know, big the PC share of Starfield hours played were. It all adds up. Clearly a lot of people signed up for PC Game Pass. Like, that's just very clear. Starfield drove a lot of PC Game Pass subs. Now the question is, was it for 1 month, or are those people going to stay subscribed? But yes, I think a lot of the growth is coming from PC for sure. Highlander, man, doing the thing, man. This is always so freaking kind how Highlander does this, ridiculously. Highlander gifted 5 subs. I always love to see the gifted subs because that brings, you know, people that can't pay to be channel members or whatever, get them the chat priority. Love to see you giving back, Highlander. You're the freaking man. Gifting 5 subs. I think Highlander's gifted 5 subs like the last 3 chats in a row. That's absolutely ridiculous, Highlander. We got Luis got a gifted sub. Biggity08 got a gifted sub. Ray Schuler, what's up, Ray? Ray got a gifted sub. Eve got a gifted sub. Gordon McLennan got a gifted sub. Shout out to you guys. You guys all have channel priority now for the next month. Drop those freaking questions into chat. You got it for the next month thanks to Highlander. Very kind of you, Highlander. You're the man. Oni X with the 2 super chat. Thoughts of what happens on PS2 late for games as a service. So you're asking me, is it too late to pivot from games as a service? I think. Am I understanding that right? Listen, I don't know the inner workings here. There are some reports floating around from David Jaffe, from other people, I will say. I'm not going to say names, but there are other people talking about this, that a lot of the PlayStation studios are not happy about the games as a service push. That they feel this is being a bit forced upon them. I can't tell you if that's true or not. I'm just saying there are people talking about it. And I say it all the time. You guys probably get so sick of hearing me say how risky games as a service is, but you guys keep asking me it. I'm sounding like a broken record, but it's not because I'm the one bringing it up. It's because people keep asking me about it in chat. Games as a service is risky. It's riskier than single player right now. I understand why publishers want to go for it. They all want the next Apex. They all want the next Destiny. They all want the next Fortnite. They all want the next Call of Duty. Odds of you getting it are next to 0. That's just the truth. Maybe you can get there, but hey, you're going to roll the dice. Most of them are never going to make it. And listen. Do I think Sony was being a bit too ambitious with those games as a service? Yeah. Whenever they started forecasting, like, we're doing more games as a service than single player, or we're, like, all of a sudden got, like, 10 games as a service games coming. Listen, I think they did over-pivot, just like I think Ubisoft over-pivoted. And right now you're seeing Ubisoft now under-pivot. That's just the truth. You can look at it. Are they still doing games as a service? Yes. They over-pivoted. I told you guys the quarter they announced it, they over-pivoted. I don't claim to be right about everything. In fact, I'm wrong all the freaking time. I was wrong about concurrent Steam numbers for Starfield. Like, I'm never someone that claims to be perfect, but I literally told you guys on the chat that Eves announced this. This is a mistake. You are over pivoting to free-to-play and game service, and it's going to bite you in the ass, and that's exactly what happened. That's exactly how it played out. Now, Sony, I also think, over pivoted. So we'll see. Should they be making some games as a service? As I always say, yes. No one should be making 0 games as a service because you might find success and a lot of money off of them. Should you be making 10 of them? No. you should not be making 10 of them. You just should not be making 10 of them. Like, that's just the truth. Some, yes. 10, no. I'm not going to go on and on about it because I go on and on about it every chat because people ask me about it every chat. It ain't my fault, all right? You guys ask me. That's not on me. You guys ask me about it. But I appreciate that super chat. All right. Casual Noob Gamer, and then I've got to freaking hit free questions. The free people are getting locked out, man. Which, I mean, I appreciate the generosity between channel memberships, which, dude, channel memberships are off the chain this month. But between channel memberships and super chats, like, it's crazy. I appreciate it so much. But I always try to get free questions in there, too. So I gotta rock some of those. So Casual Gamer and then MD. Those two, and then I'm hitting free questions. I'll come back if there's super chats and stuff later before we leave. Casual Noob Gamer with has renewed the membership. Comic book character games have such potential for great stories to draw upon. Absolutely. I think with mastering of gameplay, we're in a renaissance for comic games. Yeah, I think there's real potential to be there. You know, we'll see. Like I said, the big three are the next test. Those are going to tell us so much. Wolverine, Black Panther, and Iron Man. Those games are going to tell us so much about the future of comic books. You know, it's not like we can guarantee all three are a hit, but the reason they're so important is they're, first of all, three huge characters. People love Wolverine, they love Black Panther, they love Iron Man, so it's not like niche characters. We're talking about three of the big guns. They're single-player games, which is what people have been asking for. They're new characters besides Spider-Man. We already know Spider-Man can be a success. Can Wolverine? Can Black Panther? Can Iron Man? So Casual, we're about to find out. These next three games are really going to tell us a lot. They're going to tell us a lot. And thanks for renewing that channel membership, Casual Noob. All right, MD, and then and then Joseki. All right, that's it, because Joseki signed up for a channel membership. Drop that question, Joseki, and then gotta hit free ones. MD, Benji, thank you in the chat for the support last week. Absolutely, MD, we got your back. I will never miss an opportunity to hype you up. You're an amazing individual. Thank you. That's very kind. You know, if you read Twitter, you wouldn't think that. There's always people being mean on Twitter, but that's just life. You know, you just got to deal with it, right? You just got to take it on the chin. There's always people insulting you on Twitter all day, every day. But MD, I appreciate you. That's why I love my YouTube chat so much, is because there's just so much more support in here than on Twitter. And not that I don't get positivity on Twitter too. I get tons, but it's just like you have to wade through the sea of toxicity to also get to the positivity. One thing I love about these chats is, like, it doesn't bother me that my YouTube subs aren't like 100,000 subscribers. You know, like, I have over 75,000 followers on Twitter. I actually kind of, you know, it sounds weird, I kind of like that my YouTube's not huge because it's a smaller, tighter community, a lot more support. Not that I always want people gassing me up, but, you know, it's nice to just interact and not have, Benji, you suck. You don't know what you're talking about, man. You're so lame and ugly. Oh my God, this guy's an idiot fanboy. It's like so nice to not have to deal with that. So MD, the chat supports you. You support me in the chat. We all got each other's backs here. Let's freaking go. You're the man, MD. All right, Joseki. I already posted it. It's one of the earliest comments in the chat. All right, Joseki, let me go up to it. And then freebies. Here we go. Joseki, baby. Hello, Benji. What is up? Provocative scenario. Ooh, this is fun. With Xbox core business shifting towards a service provider more than a pure platform holder. Exactly. And that's what I meant by, like, I have to start thinking about Microsoft differently. Because up until recently, really like this quarter, I still thought about the Xbox platform as the soul of their business, and everything else is kind of add-ons and things they're moving towards. But now I think we have hit that tipping point where now we're more in that Xbox is definitely still important, but now we're seeing the sort of revenues and stuff from PC and stuff that it is really truly becoming, yeah, almost like a service provider. Still a platform holder, but you got to think, I think truly you have to think about Xbox's business now different than PlayStation and Nintendo's. You really do. You can't look at them as the exact same thing. Even though Xbox still makes a console, you just can't look at their businesses and how they run and think of them as all the same. They just have truly become something a bit different. I'm proposing a bold new direction from Joseki. Next-gen hardware sold for a profit at a lower price than PlayStation at the expense of a sensible power deficit to PlayStation. All first-party games to be temporarily exclusive to Xbox console before being ported to PlayStation and Nintendo when they're old enough to get extra software revenue, not hurting the appeal of Game Pass. I say if hardware can't sell much, make any sale make money and maximize software. Dude, that is a very interesting concept, Joseki. Very interesting. So basically your main push here that's a differentiator is still, Xbox day one, obviously, PC day one, whatever, because you still want, like you said, you want to draw people to Game Pass, for example. But then later, porting to PlayStation and Nintendo. That's very interesting. That's very interesting. Is it something I could see Microsoft doing? I don't know. Some of this stuff is hard to read. Some of this stuff is a bit hard to read on how far Microsoft's willing to go. You saw some interesting comments from Satya during that FTC hearing where he said if it was up to him, there would be no exclusives. And I kind of, again, as we see this Xbox business grow outside of just the platform, you do got to wonder, was he really truly being serious? And again, I know it's illegal to lie under oath, but an opinion, you can play with that a little bit. Not that I'm telling you to, but you can play with opinion a little bit on the stand. How do they know if you're telling the truth or not, by the way? That's your opinion is very different than a fact, right? They can prove if you're lying over a fact. The reality is you can be Satya Nadella, go on the stand and be like, oh, in an imaginary world, I'd love for there to not be exclusive. And you could be lying your ass off and they can never prove it. That's just the truth. Now you got to kind of wonder, was he really truly being serious? If he didn't have to put exclusives, would Satya, and I kind of think, yeah. I kind of think if it was up to Satya, yeah, that stuff would go everywhere. But he did say that they're in a scenario where they don't have that option, right? Because of how the gaming industry works, they have to have exclusives. Next gen, could I see them porting games to PlayStation and Nintendo? Man, that's hard, Joseki. That's hard. I don't know. I'm going to still stick with no. But I'm not confident in it, is what I'll say. I'll still say, Joseki, I think it's super interesting. I don't think you're crazy for proposing this, by the way. I still just think there's going to be so much competition in that console space that I don't know. I don't know how Sony would feel about it specifically. Nintendo don't care. I'm telling you right now, if Microsoft was like, hey, we're going to put Halo on the Switch too, they'd be like, sick. But even a ported game, even if they ported Halo, Sony takes Minecraft. It's so hard to say, Joseki. I'll still predict no. This is, as you said, a bold and provocative take, but it's a fun one. I like it. All right, let's hit some free questions before I got to go. I only got 15 or so minutes left in this chat because I got to go to work. So we're going to have to blast questions for freebies because I barely hit them today. Cameron, hey, Benji, where do you see the PS5 capping out hardware sales-wise? Lifetime? Definitely over 100 million. Where? Dude, this is such a freaking guess. It's such a guess. I don't know, 120s. Maybe 130s. They'll definitely clear 100 million. There's not a question in my mind it clears 100. PlayStation finished its life. Where's the final tally at? And its legs got cut short by the pandemic, by the way. I know around where it finished, but I want to have kind of the exact number. Because I think it honestly is going to be somewhat similar. Maybe a little growth, but I don't think they'll explosively grow. Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. 117-ish, 118, right around there. So under 120. I'll say 120s. And it could go a little higher. Do I expect, it to hit Switch's lifetime sales total? No, I don't. But, where Switch is going to finish, I don't see that. But, 120s, somewhere around there. Maybe 130s. But I think it'll be somewhat similar to PS4. Give or take a little bit. With over 100, a 100% lock. Timmer, what's up? Zinfamous. Hey, Benji, got a few MMA questions. Let's go. Love MMA questions. And one gaming question. Islam's KO of Volk was something else. Do you think Volk's decision to take this fight will end up being a big mistake looking back on it? Okay. So, yeah, Islam knocking Volk out, definitely a surprise. I thought Islam was going to win that fight because of the short notice. But it was way more dominant than I even expected. I will say that if Volk didn't take that fight on short notice, if it was just a straight-up rematch, I still would have picked Islam, but I think it would have been another close fight like that first one was. So I do think that the short notice did impact the fight. Like, I think it's sort of naive because you're seeing some people being like, it had no impact. That would have happened to an even full camp Volk. I don't agree. I mean, the dude, you could physically look at him, was not in the same shape he normally is. The way you get your timing for a fight is sparring, like truly sparring, being in the gym, which Volk said he was doing very little of. That's how you get your timing. That's how you get your vision. And yes, he's going to have a lifetime's worth of work on that, but getting it really dialed in like you need for a fight, you need those rounds, and he didn't have them. I still think Islam would have won, even with a full camp, but it wouldn't have been a first-round KO like that, in my opinion. I definitely do not think so. But it was incredible. Take nothing away from Islam. At the end of the day, Volk signed the contract, right? At the end of the day, it's Volk's fault. Do I think it'll be a big mistake? I think not necessarily, because he got paid a ton of money and there's no guarantee he would have ever got that rematch anyways. Let's say a crazy scenario happened where Islam and Charles Oliveira went through, and what if Charles knocked him out? I'm not saying that's likely, but what if? What if Charles would have KO'd Islam? Well, now Volk's definitely not getting that next fight. They're probably going to do an Islam versus Charles Oliveira trilogy, and now that gets pushed further down the line. And what if Volk loses? So there's no guarantee he was ever going to get that rematch. He got a big payday. He got his shot, whatever. I don't think it's a big mistake. What will be a big mistake, Zinfamous, is if he rushes into a fight in January with Ilia Topuria. That will be a horrible idea. If he fights Topuria in January, right after getting knocked out 2.5 months later, as much as I love Volk, I think a full camp, 6 months down the line, Volk has a good shot of beating Ilia. If he rushes in January, I mean, there's a real chance that Ilia knocks him out, in my opinion. Dude took a vicious head kick. He took major ground and pound. He needs to let his brain recover. He needs to give himself time to fully recover, wait 6 months, and then fight Ilia Topuria. So if he rushes into this Ilia fight, I'm telling you right now, it's not a guarantee that Volk loses, but he is rolling the dice, bro. For someone that hits as hard as Ilia does, to come back quickly off a knockout loss, that is not wise decision-making from Volk. He needs to really take a break. Thoughts on UFC 295 shakeup. Predictions for main and co-main. I got Pereira by KO and Aspinall by sub TKO. Also, how do you truly predict the games as a service venture will go for Sony? Good, mixed, or bad? We talked about that, kind of. 295 shakeups are interesting. I actually was one of those people that thought that Jones versus Stipe would actually be somewhat competitive. You know, you saw a lot of people saying that Jones was just going to freight train through Stipe, and that could have happened. Yeah, Stipe's older now, but the truth is we still haven't seen Jones in a dogfight at heavyweight, like at all, right? We saw him fight Cyril Gane, and Cyril Gane just decided he wasn't going to fight that day. Nothing against Jones. Jones is the greatest ever, but you cannot tell me that was the best performance Cyril Gane could do. I mean, he went out there, laid an egg, and was just like, yeah, I'm just going to lose this fight. He got overwhelmed by the moment, in my opinion, and just laid over for John. Stipe would not do that. There's not a doubt in my mind Stipe would not fold under the pressure. You're talking about someone that fought Daniel Cormier multiple times, someone that fought Francis Ngannou multiple times, dudes that's been in there with the who's who at heavyweight. He would not be overwhelmed in the moment by Jones. Jones probably would have still won, but this idea that Jones was just going to walk in and demolish Stipe in a round, I don't believe that. So the shakeup is actually a better fight, I think. Aspinall versus Sergey Pavlich. Pavlich hits like a freaking train. Here's the thing. Full camp Aspinall versus full camp Sergey. I think that Aspinall wins because I think he's the more well-rounded, talented fighter. But him coming in on short notice against Sergey Pavlich, who, like I said, hits like a freaking truck. Again, rolling the dice. We'll see. My predictions... I'll predict Pereira by KO, and actually I'm right with you. I don't feel confident in either one of those, but I have the same predictions. Pereira by KO and Aspinall by sub, I'll say. I think he'll be able to get Sergey, I don't know how his last name is Pavlich, but his Sergey, I think it's Sergey Pavlich, sub. I'll predict a rear naked choke. And how do I truly predict the games as a service venture will go for Sony, good, mixed, or bad? I'll say mixed. The Bungie stuff will do well. Marathon will be a big hit. Tons of people will play it. I'm sure they'll get another success or two out of there, but some of them I think will miss too. I'm questioning that game from Haven, man. But Sony sees something in it. So let's see what the actual gameplay looks like. But when I saw that trailer, I was like, this looks very derivative and like not... I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I'm wondering about that Haven game. But we haven't seen gameplay, so. All right, free questions. Quickly. Logan Hardy. Hey, Benji, if Sony did hit... I just bit my tongue. Did hit that $25 million, Jim Ryan will go out like a bang and be the most successful CEO of PlayStation until then, right? Yeah, probably, yeah. Also, there are 4 to 5 big first and second party games by my count. Death Stranding, Concord, Rise of the Ronin, Stellar Blade, God of War spinoff, and games still announced. Maybe Game Awards. I think you're referring to like next year. Well, God of War spinoff is not confirmed for next year, and neither is Death Stranding. But maybe you just mean like games that are announced in general. Yeah, I mean, they have so many unannounced games. But I would, if I was you, I would not, I'm not sure if I'm reading that part right, but I would not count on either Death Stranding or God of War spinoff for next year. If they are amazing, but those games don't have any sort of launch windows or anything. Now, if they do hit that 25 million, it'll be amazing because I don't think they're tracking for 25, but they think they are. And as I say all the time, I'm just a random dude. So, you know, they probably know better than me. But it doesn't look to me like they're going to hit it, but I mean, if they do, it's going to be absolutely incredible. And yeah, Jim Ryan will go out like a boss. Chris says, Hi-Fi Rush is his game of the year. Well, Chris, it's absolutely in my top 10. Absolutely. That game's incredible. Hi-Fi Rush might even be in my top 5. That game was amazing, in my opinion. Hi-Fi Rush was better than Starfield, in my opinion. And I loved Starfield. That was a great game, but Hi-Fi Rush is a better game than Starfield. To me. Biglow25, what do you think about the Xbox reorganization, especially the move to bring in the consumer sales organization directly under Microsoft Gaming Division? Listen, I think the Sarah Bond decision is very good. I've seen zero evidence that Sarah Bond is not fantastic at what she does. The questionable part for me is Matt Booty. And again, as I said before, I don't work at Microsoft. All I can see is the output of games underneath him. And while it looks like things are improving, there's just been many years where Matt Booty was over game studios where it wasn't great, you know? But Phil is going to know exactly those reasons way more than me. So, again, Sarah, great, right call. I think they nailed that. I think Sarah's the natural successor to Phil. And as I've said before, Phil still could work at Xbox for many years. I mean, he's still pretty young for an executive, like 50s. He has no reason to retire for another 10 years if he doesn't want to. But I do think it looks like Sarah's being positioned as his successor, which makes sense. And I'm sure Matt Booty does all sorts of great stuff. He's the one, though, that I am a little more of the two. I'm just like, we'll see. But, I mean, he clearly knows how to do his job way better than I do. Chris, Benji, if that was the best ever quarter for Xbox and they didn't even have ABK yet, not their best ever, but the best ever for that time period and also the best non-holiday. So, yeah, I mean, there's just no way around it. That was a great quarter financially for them. Do you think the quarter with Call of Duty could be even better? New Xbox is very exciting nowadays. Yeah, it was probably going to be the biggest quarter in the history of Xbox, including any holiday. Yeah. Yeah, Chris, this will be the record. This will be the all-time record for the Xbox division. Yep. There's not a doubt in my mind about it. You're about to see the biggest quarter in the entire history of Xbox. Now, to keep that in mind, it's because they went out and spent $70 billion on, you know, a massive publisher. So there's a bit of a handicap there in terms of why it's going to be so big. But yeah, I mean, there's zero question. You're about to see the biggest quarter in the entire history of Xbox. No doubt. Their forecasts are insane. They're going to absolutely have the biggest Xbox quarter of all time. Duquesta, did you beat Spider-Man 2 yet? No, I'm deep into it. In fact, that's what I'm juggling right now, is if I finish Spider-Man 2 first and then dive into Alan Wake 2, or if I abandon Spider-Man and go into Alan Wake, as long as I've waited for Alan Wake might have to wait another day or two for me to start it. I have it installed on my PS5, but I want to beat Spider-Man because I'm loving it and I'm far into it. So it might be another day or two before I start Alan Wake. Hey, I waited 13 years. I can wait another day or two. Uncensored Maverick, Benji the GOAT. Well, thank you so much, man. I don't consider myself the GOAT at all, but I appreciate the kind words. Uncensored Maverick, the GOAT. Big Mad Mo, good morning, folks. Good morning, Big Mad. Jacob saying hello. What up, Jacob? Amblix Game Pass, baby. Yeah, Game Pass made a lot of money this quarter. No doubt about it. Pablo, Xbox just killed the Series S in Brazil. It is now sold at the same price as the Series X, believe it or not. What? Pablo, that is crazy. The Series S sells for the same price as an X? Yeah, you're right. Pablo, if that is true, then you are correct. They killed the S in Brazil. Which you live there, so you know way more than me. That is wild. The S and the X the same price? If that's accurate, yep, S is dead in Brazil. There'd be no reason to buy an S over an X. Yoda Soda. Can you explain why do you think open world sequels take 5 years to make? I think we talked about this a bit last year. Why they don't take 2 to 3 years. Yeah, we talked about that a bit last week, Yoda Soda. I think it's the same reason as I kind of highlighted last week. It's because they're wanting to expand so much on stuff, make it better than the first one, pour more resources, bigger story, better action sequences. Like, even if they're both open world games, like, you can't, unfortunately, stay the same, or else people say that your game sucks. Like, that's just the truth. So they're always pushing for more, and more. And if you first push for more, and more, even with your learning lessons from the first game, that's still going to be more and more dev time. So, you know, it is what it is. Stefanos, I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce your last name. It's probably Stefanos, would be my guess for the first name. Hey, Benji and gang, what is up? One of the most likable people on social media. Oh, dude, what? Keep doing what you do. Well, I very much appreciate that. People gassing me up, you know, on here is very, very nice. You know, I do not view myself the same way a lot of you guys view me. In fact, that's a big part of my mental health struggles is, you know, how much I judge myself. I always say it all the time, like, all of my demons that I have don't come from the outside, you know. Some people do. You know, some people struggle with how others perceive them, or they struggle with, like, work stress or whatever. Like, all of my demons that I fight, they're all internal. It's just me telling myself I'm a failure and a horrible person and, you know, all that sort of stuff. So thank you, Stefanos. It's very kind of you. And with kind words like that, I'm sure you're also a great person. Chris, when are we going to see Silk Song? This is getting crazy. It is crazy. Like, what the heck? This is Game Awards announcement of release date, maybe. Silk Song is one of those games, Chris, that you just... It's not going to be here until it's here. I hate to say it. I'll never predict when we're going to see Silk Song and when it will get released, because it's become one of those, like, legendary games, like almost like The Last Guardian was for so many years, where it's like... When it happens, it happens. Whenever that game is released on a console or PC and I am playing it, that's when I'll believe it's here. So who frickin' knows, Chris? Who frickin' knows? It'd be awesome if it was at Game Awards. Uncensored Maverick, it's crazy how big the PC market is, yet Sony ignores it. I mean, it's doing wonders for Microsoft's business. There's no doubt about that. It is doing wonders for Microsoft. Their growth would look nothing like this without PC. There's no doubt. Abdel, I'm not going to read the console warrior part of this. Hey, I'm not telling you you're a console warrior, but I don't ever like to use words ponies, Xbots. I don't like to use that sort of stuff. And I'll just read it without that context. Abdel, I was told that launching and subscription in on PC would destroy your economics. Well, clearly that is not the case. Clearly. Now, what I will say is it has harmed their hardware. There's just no doubt about that. If we're at a point now where even Starfield can't generate huge growth, and this is another one that I was actually kind of wrong about, if I'm being honest. If you guys remember, I made that like response video to Phil. I think I was still right about some things in that my mainline point of like consistently releasing big exclusive games will help your hardware. I still stick by that. But one thing I did say in that video that was just wrong, right? You got to take it on the chin when you're wrong. I told, I was saying in that video, I was like, dude, if Starfield's a big, great game, like it's going to definitely push hardware sales. Well, guess what? Not really. It didn't really do that. Like a little bit in the US, but not in Europe at all. Overall, it doesn't look like it did much for hardware. And I got to just admit I was wrong on that. And I would say I think the reason I was wrong is I've underestimated the cannibalization impact that PC is doing, on their hardware. I really think that's why you're seeing hardware just struggle to grow at all, is because PC. And I guess that Microsoft ran that gamble because there was no doubt it was going to have some. I would say I think it's cannibalized Xbox consoles more than I expected it to be honest. And I guess Microsoft took that gamble, and it turns out, hey, shout out to Phil. This is why Phil's running a multi-billion-dollar business and why I'm a random, retail worker who's just in his room talking to people. Phil was right, Well, listen, I'm not going to say Phil was right about everything because I don't agree with him on everything he said. I still stand by. I think he was a little too flippant around, big single-player games won't really help our hardware because I still think a consistent slate will. But listen, they ran the gamble and it worked out better for them, and you can see that in the revenue and content and services growth. That's why Phil is running the company, and that's why Benji Boy is a random dude on YouTube and Twitter. And that's just the truth. Duquesta, revenue is one thing, but how are the profit margins? Well, we'll never know that. They just don't give them. So we'll never know. I would say I have no question in my mind Xbox is profitable overall, though. That content and services money that they're generating now, trust me, they're profitable. Trust me, they're profitable. It's a profitable business for them. Now, how profitable? Who knows? I would be a lot more questioning their profit margins if hardware revenue was a bigger chunk than it is. But the fact that hardware revenue is actually at, like, percentage-wise, much lower of their total revenue than it was before, actually, in terms of profitability, points to them probably being much more profitable because, let's be honest, you don't make a ton of money off hardware no matter what, even if you're at above a break-even point, which a lot of times companies aren't. The fact that they're doing so much of their business through content and services, trust me, they're profitable. But how much, we'll never know. Space Dovikin, Satya Nadella is pretty confident in doubling down on Xbox. I think they're being very successful. I mean, they're getting there. But again, you just got to look at them different now. We can't do the whole console race like we used to do for so many years. Me being a long-time sales community member, I've been posting on sales forums about video games since 2006. So that's what? 2016 would be 10 years. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I mean, that's 17 years I've been active in the sales community online. And we used to always talk about, like, the console race. For Xbox, it's not becoming that important. I know that sounds crazy. And when I say not that important, guys, again, that's not me saying that they're abandoning the console. But I'm saying in regards to their actual business, the console race isn't that important to them anymore. They want to sell Xbox consoles, but they don't live and die by it anymore. So we got to look at them a bit different. Cosimo, how long have we got? Jesus, I got to go. Cosmo, Matt Booty, 5 minutes and I'm out. 5 minutes and I'm out. Cosmo, Matt Booty. I always giggle with that name. I can't help it either. I feel bad for him. I'm sure he's heard that his whole life. But, I mean, it's hard to not see the word booty. And, I mean, it's tough. I feel for him. I'm sure he's a great guy. Hey, listen, I had to hear it all the time, too. People used to call me Bend Over. People that would want to bully me in school when I was a kid, they'd be like, hey, bend over. Or I'd hear that one a lot. Jared, huge deserved promotion for Sarah Bond. I agree. She deserves it. Ryan Faustman. Why do so many people place such high importance on Keeley's show and his awards? I've got an easy answer for you. It places such a divide on the industry I'm not a fan at all. All these games deserve to shine, not just one. Well, that part at the end, I just kind of don't agree with Ryan because, listen, I get your point. But, like, there is such thing as, like, crowning, you know, the most prestigious game award. Or not game award, just like award. There's a reason why winning an Oscar is so important. There's a reason why winning an Emmy is so important or a Grammy is so important. You know, that's just part of life. Like, listen, these companies don't live and die by whether they get a Keeley award. Trust me, you know. So I agree with you in, like, letting games shine, letting them all get visibility and stuff. I think that's great. The question on why does Keeley's show specifically get so much importance over IGN's awards or over GameSpot's awards, there's a very easy answer. The ratings. They ain't close. The amount of people that are going to read GameSpot's Game of the Year compared to how many people are going to tune in and watch Keeley's Game Award, who wins that, aren't close. Not that I'm not telling you that GameSpot doesn't get good traffic or whatever, but it ain't close. The total amount of people that tune into the Game Awards, that's what makes it the definitive award, besides the fact it's all these panels voting on it, which also helps that, right? GameSpot's Game of the Year is just GameSpot. Keeley's is a big aggregation of, I think, over like 200 outlets or something crazy like that. So you have all of that combined, right? It's not just one, it's a lot of people voting plus the viewership. It's just going to get more attention than any other award show in the entire industry. So that's really what makes it prestigious, is the most people are going to walk away saying that was the game of the year because that's what they saw, right? Your casual gamer is probably going to tune into the Keeleys because of the huge ratings and the game announcements, but they're probably not going to read GameSpot. So when they see that this game got Game of the Year, they're like, yeah, that got Game of the Year. So that's why. That's why. All right, I gotta go. I gotta go. Let me scroll down. Any channel members I missed or super chats at the end, and I gotta go. I'm sorry, but I have to go to work. I like cut it close today. Wow. I gotta get in the shower and go. Did any channel members not get a question answered? I apologize to the freebies. You guys barely got touched today, but I'm sorry. Anthony M. Johnson did not get one. Quick question, if you have the time. With the hardware declines, do you see Xbox Series doing what the Xbox One couldn't do and clear 60 million? Oh, man, that's a great question. Because I was very bullish before about Xbox Series outselling Xbox One lifetime. But like I just admitted, I considered the cannibalization impact of releasing their games day one on PC and Game Pass on PC. So I was just wrong. So, man, I'll be bold. I'll still say they do it. I just think eventually the amount of software release, you know, if they really get to a point where they're delivering a big AAA game every quarter, even with the cannibalization from PC, I still think they can outsell Xbox One. But I'll tell you, it played out very different than I expected. And in fact, by the way, Microsoft's forecasting a very strong hardware impact over this next quarter. A lot of people missed that. They're expecting very strong hardware results over the holidays. So, you know, don't doom and gloom hardware too much too early. Let's see how this holiday plays out. Microsoft's bullish on hardware this holiday. So let's see. They're forecasting a really good holiday for that. I'll still stick with they do it, Anthony. They still outsell Xbox One, but I do think at the end of the day there will be more cannibalization from PC than I expected on console sale. So we'll see, but they feel good about it. Okay, I gotta go, dude. Sorry, guys. Sorry, freebies. I hope you guys had fun. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Like the video if you haven't already. Helps the YouTube algorithm. Follow me on Twitter or X or whatever the freaking heck it's called if you're not already. Thank you for all the super chats. Thank you for all of the channel members. There's so many channel members nowadays. I appreciate that so much. You guys are amazing. Thank you for everything you guys do. Oh, let me read the poll before we close because we only did 2 polls today. The other question I ask is, do we see Game Pass on a PlayStation console in the next 10 years? 63% of you say no. 37% of you say yes. I'm also going to vote no, but who knows? We're in pretty interesting times for Xbox.
All right, guys, I got to go. Thank you for all the support as always. Thank you for the kind words as always. Thank you guys for helping me through the dark times as things get better. And I got to go. I have to go to work. I got to get in the shower and go. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye. 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 Bye.